Let's speak to Sir Vincent Fean, who is a former Consul General for Jerusalem. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
What would you like to see come out of the meeting between the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and other EU leaders over in Germany at the weekend?
I'd like to see a reaffirmation of what's fundamental, which is that Israelis, ordinary Israelis, will not be safe until ordinary Palestinians are safe. The same goes for the Lebanese people. In the last 10 days, we've seen an increase of displaced people in the region from 2 million in Gaza to 3, now with an extra million or more than a million in Lebanon. So somehow getting back to what you described as the ceasefire deal, starting with Gaza, but also involving, obviously, Lebanon, has to be the way for the international community to push. And there is one other element, which is that we're expecting retaliation by Israel against Iran that could spiral out of control. So Israel's friends, the UK as a friend, must counsel caution on Israel at this crucial time.
The United States are the biggest power broker in this, and we hear that the Israeli Prime Minister has given up listening to Joe Biden. There isn't much engagement between the pair. And the Israeli Prime Minister, as we've seen over the past week, particularly since a week ago today, those attacks on Israel by Iran, those 181 ballistic missiles launched at Israel, particularly in the last week, the insistence, the might, the stubbornness, some may say, the intentions of the Israeli Prime Minister are stronger than ever. Not only is he still intent on wiping out Hamas in Gaza, he's gone for Hezbollah in Lebanon, and he's prepared to take the fight to the whole of the Middle East. So how do you then marry that up with what you hope Western leaders are advocating for, which is a ceasefire deal, which is some sort of peace negotiation?
Yeah. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that Israel has achieved its military aims in Gaza. Therefore, why not negotiate a ceasefire with the remnants of Hamas to secure the outcome that the vast majority of his people want, which is the release of those over 100 hostages held horribly for more than a year. Now, that may or may not be realistic, but it is the right thing to push for. And the other element of this equation that I'd like to draw attention to is international law. It's only as important as member states of the UN make it, starting with the US. But under the international law, Israel is not entitled to be in Gaza or be in the West Bank. Therefore, member states of the UN, including the UK, which has come into office, the government has come into office with a mandate to uphold international law, should be pushing for that. And I'm afraid that means pressure on Israel.
We've already seen an attempt by South Africa via the UN system of challenging Israel, trying to haul them up over international law, and the US did not back that. It sort of fell flat on its face, I suppose, if I'm to simplify it massively. An attempt has already been made. Israel largely ignores the UN. There is a completely fractured relationship between the United Nations and Israel. Israel just will not listen to them. And so if I'm to say, well, we've tried that route, what else is there? If we know Israel will continue to not listen to the United Nations, how is that a pathway forward?
Today, it seems that Netanyahu is not listening to Biden nor to the UN, that's for sure the UN, as you said, and has put down Macron for advocating an arms ban to Israel. Now, our own government has a major part to play here because we are a friend of the Palestinians, we are a friend of Israel, we have the locus to engage. We are not constrained, rightly or wrongly, by the EU rules, so we can offer an independent foreign policy, and we have a convening role. we know everybody in the region. We know the Arabs from the Gulf to Egypt and Jordan. We know who's important and who can be brought together.
Do you think we have more of a part to play than, a nation like Saudi, who is heavily involved, or certainly has been in some of these negotiations?
I think so. We should be talking to the Saudis, obviously. We should play them in. That's important. They should play us in. But a combination of the West and Israel's neighbours need to come together to, if I may put it this way, bring the Israeli population back to the reality that when Israel wins militarily, it doesn't bring peace. We've been here before. This is bigger and worse than ever before, and the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza is horrendous, truly horrendous. It would be better known if journalists like you were allowed by Israel to get in there and report objectively. But we know that innocents are being killed, as Guterres said, in Gaza and in Lebanon as we speak. Now, that is not acceptable, nor is it a recipe, I repeat, for Israelis' long-term safety. It isn't. There has to be a better way. Now, can that be brought about while Netanyahu is in office? I don't know how long he's going to last. That's going to be a question for the Israeli people, not for the British people.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, coming back to what the UK can do, in my opinion, stand up for international law without fear or favour, recognise the right to Palestinian self-determination alongside Israel, I repeat, alongside Israel, recognise that Palestinian state and work to treat them equally.
I mean, I'm just seeing detail now coming through on my wires that there are heavy clashes in northern Gaza at a refugee camp this evening, happening right now, or certainly being reported to us here right now. So this is the other element as well, is that Israel may say that on a military front, their work is done or pretty much done in Gaza, but we shouldn't be immune to the fact that there is still intense action going on even in that particular area. And so it feels that the end, or an end, is still impossibly far away. Israel's almost, proud to be fighting on 7 fronts, is what they say. So, even if Gaza is done, or kind of when it's done, it's all the other areas. It's then Lebanon. It's what's happening in Syria, Iraq, and then onwards.
You're right. And when my point is that Israel's work will never be done as long as there is not mutual security and equal rights for Palestinians and Israelis. The Houthis and Hezbollah kicked off after the 7th of October, after the horrors of the 7th of October, because of the scale and indiscriminate nature of the Israeli retaliation. I'd call it revenge. Now, that means that Israeli actions currently are creating new battalions for Hamas in Gaza and elsewhere, and creating new battalions for Hezbollah, because innocent people are dying, and their relatives are, once they cease to be shocked, are angered by that, naturally. So I'm not advocating that anybody should join Hamas or Hezbollah. They are not the way. But what I'm trying to say is that Netanyahu has sold the Israeli people a pup. The belief that living by the sword is an eternal safeguard.
Yeah.
It is not.
And look, just one more thing to report in, and that is that 7 civilians have been killed, we understand, in an Israeli strike on Damascus. This is from Reuters, citing Syrian state media. Look, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much for your wise words. Sir Vincent Fean, former Consul General for Jerusalem. Thank you.
Thank you.